Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hi, I'm Flight Lt Chris Sully and welcome to the latest RAF Inside Air podcast. From keeping our tech up to date and in good order to future planning how we might engage with IT in the months and years to come, the Air Cyberspace Services Centre team work behind the scenes around the clock.
There will be no shortage of more digital tools coming in our direction, whether that be AI or Copilot and use of large language models, but also through optimization of data. I think we're going to do away with your huge spreadsheets full of people's data and do away with your huge document libraries full of information, and it's going to be far more integrated and being able to get information to where it needs to be on demand.
The customer is central to what we do. We fight a lot of fights that people probably don't see in order to advocate for them and those users that we're speaking about in terms that might not turn their laptop on every week even, depending on what it is that they do. It's also advocating for them and the kind of service that they're going to need, as well as people who are working day to day.
From my perspective as a field support technician in DSF, we are massively encouraged to go out and take on any additional courses, any qualifications, a lot of which, as Sir rightly said, have been civilianised and are now more recognised. It really makes them more attractive, and I think it's great because it allows us to expand our technical skills, and from then on we can use that to benefit not just this organisation, but it puts us in better stead when we eventually come to that time to eventually leave.
Once again, we'll also reheat a few stories which you might have missed, and we'll be finding out who's under the hat this week with AS1 Ben Russell.
What's the best thing about your job?
Best thing about my current job, as corny as it sounds, is probably the people. I look after quite a large squadron, and I really enjoy trying to develop them, move them on through their careers and push them and get them to push their own boundaries.
It's Inside Air, and we're talking this week about cyber security. And I've got three people with me who are going to talk us through exactly what that means and what it means to us as end users and what it means as a department. So, gents, I'm going to get you, if you can, just to introduce yourself. Sarah, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. My name is Squadron Leader Graham Canty, and I am the Officer Commanding Digital Support Squadron South, part of the Cyberspace Services Centre.
Great. I'm Sergeant George Updale. I am in the service management flat of the Air Cyberspace Services Centre.
And I'm AS1 Technician Lewis Veach, part of Digital Support Flight, Bryce Norton, Field Support Technician.
Thanks for joining us on Inside Air for this episode. When we talk about air cyber security, what exactly do we mean? What does the team do, basically?
Well, in terms of our output, we're there to be the digital hub at all of our air bases. So we formally form part of the Airbase Enablement Force, formally stood up last year. And we're there to essentially simplify digital access for everyone at the airbase. So people will have previously understood what a C4I was, providing digital enablement at the airbase. The Cyberspace Services Centre now has DSFs in replacement of those C4Is, digital support flights, and providing scaled digital support to all people at those air bases.
We're familiar with the days of C4I, maybe C4I and support from them. Where are we now with cybersecurity and the wider defence security systems?
In terms of cybersecurity in general, I think we've come on absolute leaps and bounds. If you think going back 10 years ago, we probably used to buy systems and services off the shelf from industry partners. We used to implement them across the airbase or the station, as it was then known, and not have any security wrap or service wrap around it. And it was a bit of a wild west. So in terms of where we stand now, and whilst there's still some way to go to be able to view and understand all those services and who owns them, we've got a much better system in terms of managing them, accessing them, and just understanding what risk it provides to us.
Anything to add to that, George? Or yourself, Louis?
Nothing other than just to reinforce what the Sir said. We've on our local side at the DSF, we have DCPT. These are the masterminds behind accreditation, making sure that any systems that are outside of ModNet are accredited and up to date and in compliance with our policies.
And a lot of it, obviously, because there's a technical side and there's also the policy and that side of things. So I guess you're kept busy on all of those different elements. If there is such a thing as a typical day for any of you, and George, I'll come to you for this, what would it look like if there is such a thing?
So our work is very varied, and we sort of like sit as within service management. We sort of offer as a sort of project house and the sort of top end for our projects. So the many things that we will be doing on a sort of like day-to-day basis, whether that's supporting sort of DSS or specific projects that they may be fulfilling, or something that we'll be doing specifically within the team. So yeah, it's very varied for us.
So from a field support technician perspective, our day is different from every other. We do a lot of project management. Everything we have comes through a ticketing system called Digits. That's where we receive our tasks, and these tasks can range from quite simple to authentication and administrative roles to projects and installations of Wi-Fi and other services such as that.
We all, as RAF personnel, whether regular or reserve, engage in some way with the technology that's used. For end users, obviously, there have been some recent changes. There are changes going on all the time, upgrades and changes to system. The recent Windows upgrade being a good example. It can be a painful process for people at the end who are, at the end of the day, just trying to do their job. What message would you have for those people?
Yeah, Chris, I'll probably jump in there. I think I really empathise because it really is quite hard to understand who you go to and who you get support from at the moment, because through a number of changes that the Air Force have implemented, i.e. the Wittering model, and we've got Defence Digital and RAF Digital and loads of different organisations with digital in their name or cyber in their name. And it's not clearly apparent who do I go to get the support for the thing that's causing me a problem. So what we're trying to do is act much more positively and proactively in engaging the customer base on each of the air bases or in the air wings to give them clarity around how do I resolve this single problem that I've got. And that's quite difficult because all of those organisations I mentioned kind of operate in somewhat their own remit in their own stovepipe. So I think at the moment, given that we've now formed under the Airbase Enablement Force, we have a singular command and control over all of those separate air bases. So at the kind of highest level of the Cyberspace Services Centre, Wing Commander Bryden as the OC has a kind of regional squadron construct. He can ask his squadron commanders what's going on at any one of the air bases and kind of have an aggregated view around what sort of issues are being presented, and therefore also design our support to it to be more appropriate and more responsive. So I think trying to understand the customer's problem more directly, and then also very quickly shape the whole unit, the whole organization to respond more effectively, rather than just the way it used to be in a C4I might have a problem at a station, but they operate in their stovepipe and they couldn't necessarily help other sites beyond them. So I think we are geared up much better to support the customer. But again, I think that comms piece around who we are, what we do, and what we're there to support is the thing left to do.
Anything to add to that, George, at all?
Yeah, so I feel like the benefit that we've had in more recent times is with stuff like moving to multi-factor authentication or for the Windows 11 upgrade, that has got our names in people's heads. And so that what Sir was just sort of mentioning there in terms of trying to get ourselves known out there, making sure that people have an understanding as to what services we provide. These are like direct ways in which we can achieve that. So hopefully, your general user that's got an IT issue has a better idea of, okay, I go to the SRC for these sorts of issues now, and if it isn't them, then they can help direct to where I need to go.
And Louis, any thoughts from your side?
Just reinforcing again, as Sarah's just quite rightly said, they can always come to our section as the local standpoint. We also at Bryce Norton, we've got our Teams page for the local site as well that we use to inform customers of any issues or queries that they have as well. In addition to that, we also find that it's quite useful to make it known in the arrivals brief. Obviously, whenever you arrive to a station, you'll go through the arrivals brief like most. We make it known in that presentation that we cover such issues, and if you're not sure, come to us or contact these other contacts that you might need.
And I will just come in off the back of that as well. I think many of the listeners will probably have experienced a historic service to what a C4I used to provide, and you could just walk in the front door, you could talk to a whole room full of people and say, hey, can someone help me with this issue? And someone would invariably raise their hand and say, yeah, I can help you out, come over here and let's do it. What we see now is that the DSFs, the digital support flights, probably have more closed doors on certain days so they can get on with doing some of their internal stuff. But ultimately, alongside the strategic support program that made some efficiencies for air a number of years back, we just haven't got the same workforce that we used to. So the level of service has had to somewhat retrograde into where we are now. But I think the key message that I want to kind of push is that the teams are absolutely there to support the airbase. Like the airbase is still the primary customer, and they are there. They want to help. So if people are met by what would seem a closed door because the door is physically closed, please do try and engage on that team site and to try and engage through local contacts and build those connections. And they are absolutely there to support.
And one of the things I noticed, having gone through the Windows 11 upgrade myself recently for the laptop, is how helpful the team are. But I'm guessing one of the frustrations for you, you're dealing with people at all different levels of knowledge. You're getting somebody who maybe turns the computer on and uses it for its basic functions through to people who know as much as you do. Pitching that must be quite a difficult thing, I'm guessing, Louis, from a sort of frontline point of view.
Yeah, there are definitely some frustrations. It's not a particularly simple process for a lot of people, which is completely understandable. The information is out there, and it does make sense when you read through it, but we're always happy to help people go through with it. I think a lot of people tend to store things on their devices locally, and the whole point of Windows 11 is it's going to remove all that and send everything online. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, which we help a lot of people try and understand. But ultimately, we're always happy to help them with it.
I think I'd say that the Windows 11 update really has been nothing short of painful for everyone. It has not been the simplest or the easiest thing for anyone to do, and some of that is amplified by the fact that we operate ModNet and we're not operating normal civilian machines, so that there are nuances to it. But the benefit of the Cyberspace Services Centre has been that ultimately, if that had happened in the C4I days, each site would have had to do all its upgrades. It would have managed all of its lessons and learned all of the hard-fought lessons that it needed to by itself, and not gain from the organisational benefit and the wider stations doing it before them. So I think that shared voice and contributing to a central pool of people trying to help migrate Windows 11 has made it slightly easier, albeit, it's not lost on me that it has been quite painful for everyone to endure.
From your perspective, George, you've been around for a number of years, obviously. Do you think it's been a better system because of the way we're working it now as opposed to the old C4I days?
I do, yeah, I do think so. I think especially as an Air Force, as we change to be more modern, this makes sense. I came from industry, so I did a period of time in industry and then came here, so I can see where the vision is and how that relates to what people might see on CV Street. You will have a centralized service center, you will have a centralized IT desk, and so that's what people expect. They go to one place to get fixed, and then they might have a local sort of hub that can help them out. So that's sort of what we're trying to develop here. And I hopefully people can just see that we are trying to make sort of like the customer central to what we do. We fight a lot of fights that people probably don't see in order to advocate for them and those users that you're speaking about, in terms that might not turn their laptop on every week, even depending on what it is that they do. It's also advocating for them and the kind of service that they're going to need, as well as people who are working day to day.
And at the end of the day, as a reservist, I can certainly vouch for that. There may be a week, 10 days when I don't fire it up. I don't have a need to, and then I fire it up, and I need to be able to get that support and help remotely, from somebody who understands that I'm not using it every day. And yeah, the basic computer functions are great, but if you start talking about technical things within ModNet or whatever, it takes a bit more time to say, oh, right, okay, I know what you're talking about now. Got it. That must sort of add to that frustration. Plus, of course, as you said, George, you come from a civilian background. When you call civilian helplines, there's always that inevitable half-hour wait as well. That's just one of the things of life, isn't it?
Indeed.
I think we just sucked that one up. But let's talk about some of the team successes, things like the Defence Digital Change Programme, the DD programme. How have they been, and what are the successes as the department, the team had?
Yeah, so I alluded to a little bit earlier, and Windows 11 is part and parcel one of those things. But people have seen so many things change as we modernise our IT estate and we try and increase our cybersecurity across the MOD. So things like multi-factor authentication, people getting USB YubiKeys to be able to plug into their device to be able to authenticate them, or using Microsoft Authenticator on their phone. All of these things are implemented to make our organisation more resilient from a cyber perspective. So naturally, those are central DD projects rolled out from the Centre for Digital for the MOD. They look very heavily to the TLBs, and specifically for Air, to the Cyberspace Services Centre to act as the project lead to roll out those capabilities. So again, using the sum of all our parts, all of the different DSFs across the whole of the UK, we're able to pass out a similar message, pass out a similar process and structure for the customer coming to the DSF, picking up their YubiKey or registering for their authentication and rolling that out. And that's the general intent, is to not have a different process for it when you exist at each airbase. You just do the same thing. There's a standardized bucket of processes that we have and we implement everywhere, albeit we're still on the journey to really try and enforce that everywhere.
And from your perspective, George, how are those things going? It must be great when you look back and you see a project that's gone through successfully that you've been involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the really telling of the success is the fact that we're not hearing much about it. Like it's actually quite quiet on that front. That's like a real key. It's not going to be all, oh my God, this is amazing, we're so glad this is here. It's best that it's just part of people's daily lives, and having those conversations with people, whether that be on station and they sort of saying like, oh yeah, I needed to change my MFA authentication device. It was really easy. You just go, cool. That I'm glad for you that that hasn't been a drama.
That's quite an interesting point as well, I'm guessing, Louis, because at the end of the day, yeah, you're not going to, people probably not going to come up to you in the bar and go, you're doing a terrific job. It's just kind of assumed you'll do it. It's one of those jobs, isn't it, that people complain when things aren't working as they expect, rather than when you've made a significant change in a big project and it's gone well.
Yeah, pretty much nail on the head there.
Which must be frustrating at times.
It can be, but ultimately our goal is to support the station, and as long as the station's receiving the right support, that is fulfilling in our goal.
We're talking about some of the projects, some of the successes you've had. There must be an enormous amount of planning that goes into this right the way across the defence spectrum, because maybe it's led by you, maybe it's led by somebody else, that there's new or better technology which can better support what we're all trying to do. The process of even getting that approved before you start the technical rollout, it must just roll on for almost to the point where by the time it comes in, something could be out of date if we take too long. How do you speed that process? How does it work?
Yeah, it's really quite difficult, and most users will come to maybe the Cyberspace Services Centre or the front door, or use the digits tasking tool and look at it and go, well, this isn't modern, this isn't like industry aligned, and it's not giving us what we want. And we absolutely agree. And one of the plans at the moment is to implement a completely new digital tasking tool. So when you go onto ModNet and you need to raise an issue, you don't go to Digits, which is a power application on Microsoft. It's a modern, clean system where you can raise your instance, raise your request. There's a knowledge base that talks you through how to do things. It's integrated with AI, so you can ask it questions and it gives you responses. So that we're currently looking at the use of ServiceNow to try and do that as an industry platform. And you're absolutely right. We're already trying to re-review all of our processes, all of our outputs, to understand how might we optimize that with this new tooling. How can we integrate AI into that? How can we speed that up for the customer? So naturally, half the team are always delivering the output, delivering the support to the customer, but half the team are also trying to work on how do we grow, how do we mature as an organization, how can we onboard those sort of tools. So hopefully that's something that will be with us in the very near future.
And you mentioned the AI side of things there. How much of a potential, for bearing in mind obviously the security side of everything that we do, does AI have to potentially play in what we're going to do moving forward?
I think it can't be undersold. I think the amount of people that are probably using the likes of ChatGPT or Copilot or AI tools in their day-to-day life, it's a huge accelerator. I mean, there's dangers, no doubt, with using them and becoming too reliant on them, or using them to write SJARs or OJARs or official sensitive information that you upload to them, and people trying to take a bit of a short journey to an end result. But the capability that it gives you is overwhelming, and what we can't do is not embrace that capability and that resource, because our adversaries and industry around us will, and we'll be behind the competitive edge. So I know there are moves to increase access to Microsoft Copilot licenses for the RAF, and they're being rolled out over the course of this year. But I suppose more critically is the training and the support that we provide to people to be able to use those tools, because we don't want them chucking people's OJARs into them and getting spurious results. We want them to be used effectively and safely.
And George?
Yeah, just on the AI piece, the cyber industry as a whole hasn't really got its head around what the full capabilities of AI. And so when you sort of talk about that from a military application, obviously there's dangers there. There's massive dangers there. And it's our job as the custodians of that sort of technology to ensure that we're moving in the right direction at the right time. Obviously, the military will always be careful about moving into a new space when there are unknowns in that way. And so I think that's a key element for us to understand. And there are so many benefits to it. And I appreciate from a user perspective, they see things like ChatGPT and Copilot and go, why can't we have that? And it's just trying to help them understand. It's great. It looks great. It looks very, very exciting. But actually, is it giving you everything you need?
And is it reliable? And are you providing information outside the sphere, as it were? Louis, from somebody that works in the industry, it must be an exciting time though, because we've seen in the last 18 months, 2 years, from sort of almost a standing start to where we are now, and every week it seems every day there's something new and exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, it's a massive progression over the past years from what AI was to what it's become now. Admittedly, I'm a bit adverse to it. I try to be as careful as I can be when it comes to things like this, and always advise people around me in the work just to be sure that if you are going to use it right. I think its progression is quite terrific, but as Sir and the Sergeant have mentioned, we just have to be quite careful with how we integrate it.
So exciting times, but caution is going to sort of prevail. So we know that the Airbase Enablement Force has recently stood up. How does your team fit into that and the work that they do and working together?
Well, the Airbase Enablement Force essentially exists to remove friction and unlock productivity at the front line, to make sure really that the airbase runs as smoothly as possible from a digital, logistics and an administrative perspective. So you'll have had some previous podcasts on HR ops and HR centres that have been stood up. The Cyberspace Services Centre is aiming to do almost exactly the same, but in as smooth a process as possible. The HR transformation model, I think, that was experienced by Air was quite difficult and painful. And what we're trying to do is smooth that process out and make sure that the end user doesn't see any impact to their output. So the Cyberspace Services Centre particularly are there to be that digital enabler. So operate on behalf of the Airbase Enablement Force to smooth the path forward for allowing our aircraft to fly and for us to enable operations at the front line.
You do lots of internal work as well, sir. I understand you recently helped save a huge amount of money with how you run airtime billing. So that's part of what the team do as well, is it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so mobile phones and access to SIM cards and airtime plans are absolutely part and parcel of as part of the services that we provision. And it goes down to the old model of separate C4Is acting in stovepipes, and there being hundreds of bills at each station that weren't necessarily ratified in a coherent way, or there was duplication across different airbases, or people holding numerous different SIMs, or just SIM cards that weren't necessarily used or used in a deployed environment and weren't planned for. So being able to collate all of that data, bring it centrally, use some tooling to analyze it and understand how can we more effectively use our mobile contracts. Yeah, over £1 million over the past year that's been saved in terms of removing redundant contracts and optimizing some of the billing and making sure we're getting best value for money with our contractor providers.
So some successes in that field as well, and I'm sure that work continues. We hear lots, rightly, in 2026 about the whole force workforce. Your team plays a huge part in that as well, obviously, with everything that you do.
Absolutely. So in my squadron alone, it's comprised of over 100 people. That is RAF regulars, RAF reserves, that's civil servants, it's contractors through the Hades or the HERA contract. There is a complete broad spectrum of people. And I suppose from an employment perspective, it doesn't really matter what creed or what background or how you're employed. It's actually what are your skills and how can we employ them to maximum effect to deliver digital support to the customer. So some sites will have different types of people employed, whether it be civil servants or contractors. But ultimately, what we try to do is deliver the same standard service to every airbase. So if there are changes in terms of people or contractors, naturally military turnover quite fast. So continuity is difficult to retain. So in some of those key continuity roles, we try and place some civil service or contractors where possible.
So busy times, Georgia, with that side of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of to support what Sir's just said there, like it's a variation within that. So within Sir's squadron, he's got training establishments, he's got main operating bases, he's got multiple facets that are being supported by DSFs and sort of troops on the ground from a cyber perspective, and then that's replicated over 2 other regions as well. So across the whole of the estate, there's lots of variation that we'll be supporting, and for those that are based in those places, they've got to have a very good knowledge of like the nuances that occur within them, depending on the sensitivity of a certain building, or just sometimes just the difficulty of actually trying to get certain comms into a certain area.
George, you mentioned earlier on that you'd moved over from a business background, a civilian background, to the RAF. Why did you make the move? What was it that kind of enticed you into the role here?
So I was working for the National Clearinghouse down near Luton, and I actually was working with a couple of ex-military people down there, and it was their professionalism really that sort of drew me to it. I was in my mid-20s, not really understanding how to progress myself within IT. I wanted to get some formal training. I have no degree, so I thought, well, I'll use this as an opportunity and get myself enlisted in the RAF. Typically, I had a brother-in-law who was in the army at the time, and he said, "Don't join the army, join the RAF."
Good man.
So I did so. And yeah, sort of 7 years later, I'm still here, and I'm really enjoying the work that I'm doing, still developing, still getting on things out that I sort of set to do at that time.
And one of the greatest things about the Air Force across the range of roles on offer is that when it comes to subject matter experts, rank really becomes irrelevant. Louis, I mean, from your perspective, you're doing this job inside and out, and you're being lent on as part of the team and to keep very much to the forefront of things, presumably.
Yeah, definitely to an extent. Always try to make sure that rank does come into it when it needs to. But yeah, from a technical perspective, it is nice to feel quite involved in that respect and know that it's nice to be relied upon in terms of that technical output as well.
And so you mentioned earlier on that within the team there are regulars and reservists. If somebody's listening to this who maybe is thinking of joining the RAF Reserve, what are the attractions for coming in and working with the Cyber Services Centre?
I think breadth, it is so broad. There's always some administrative jobs that have to be done, and some people might gripe at some of the contractualization of some things that we do to add some efficiency. But in terms of the scope, we've got a team deploying next month out to Singapore to operate in defensive cyber marvel, where they will be put through their paces and tested alongside Army to cyber defend certain critical national infrastructure. We've got huge enterprise projects such as Windows 11 and multi-factor authentication and other things coming from our defence digital counterparts that are critical really to defence's output to streamline and make sure we've got as much efficiency as possible. So the job that they're doing is not low level. It's not it's a huge enabler for how we deliver our output, and it kind of makes us ready to fly and fight. So I think being part of that bigger organisation, the bigger team, and actually having a really meaningful output is what I can sell to them.
And if somebody's listening to this now and thinking, actually, I've got a bit of time, I'm at that stage in my life, and I've got the skill set that may be of use, what's the best way for them to find out a bit more?
So in terms of the reservists specifically, there's a couple of routes through. So directly into the RAF reserves, into the website, but also we have 600 Squadron based out of RAF Northolt, who are the kind of cyberspace reserve specialist squadron, who engaging locally with them and probably getting a bit of a familiarization to understand what sort of things are they employed in. And you obviously used the ranked thing earlier around you don't have to hold a certain rank to do a certain thing. That is never more present with the reserves. We have chief information officers, we have chief technical officers from industry operating at an AS1 or a corporal level, and ultimately critically driving kind of maturity and coherence in some of our projects. And I'd really advocate for them to come in and join the organisation to help contribute to a wider defence output. It really is amazing how we employ some of those skills and optimise them.
And George, do you get people who are already in service who move over and think, actually, this is something that really interests me? And if somebody is in that sort of fold, what's the best way for them to progress?
Yeah, 100%. We've seen lots of people sort of make the move over. They may have joined as within RAF regiment or within one of the other trades very early in life, sort of made a decision straight out of school, and then they actually find that they've got a propensity for cyber and for tinkering with computers. So they think to come over. So in those instances, definitely talk to your HR centres, have that conversation about what you need to do to get yourself moved over, get to your AFCO, and come over to cyber.
And in that case, and in the case of anyone that's in with the team, presumably the qualifications and the experience you're talking about, Singapore and all of those great things, will stand you in great stead for when you eventually do leave service.
It's hard in the RAF, really, in terms of trying to retain that talent, because I think we've gone leaps and bounds forward from historic, not necessarily giving civilian accredited qualifications to people and just training them and not giving them the opportunity to pass an exam. But now I think we've moved on from that. I think we see the value in making sure we are civilian aligned and industry aligned to make sure that people have professional registration. I think the number of people in the uptake of IET, Institute of Engineering Technology, or British Computer Society subscriptions has absolutely gone through the roof. And not only does that declare your capability as an engineer or a technician, but it also it aligns you really well to the civilian sector and industry to be re-employed in the future. So it's a bit hard to maybe retain people sometimes because they see the opportunity on the outside, but equally I think keeping them well employed and close to delivering critical RAF outputs just gives them a bit more resolve into the organisation.
How do you feel about that, Louis?
I think he's absolutely right. I think retention is a bit of a difficult one, especially with all the skills we can gain. But I think that one of the greatest benefits from my perspective as a field support technician in DSF, we are massively encouraged to go out and take on any additional courses, any qualifications, a lot of which, as Sir rightly said, have been civilianised and are now more recognised. It really makes them more attractive, and I think it's great because it allows us to expand our technical skills, and from then on we can use that to benefit not just this organisation, but it puts us in better stead when we eventually come to that time to eventually leave.
Just to sort of moving toward the end here, what can we look forward? We touched on AI, but what else can we look forward to in the world of air cybersecurity going forward?
I think as kind of alluded to in terms of the core projects that are coming through, the MOD is looking to hugely modernise its organisation. The digital is an absolute critical component to how we look to fly and fight and how we look to aid resilience and productivity in the future. So there will be no shortage of more digital tools coming in our direction, whether that be AI or Copilot and use of large language models, but also through optimization of data. I think we're going to do away with your huge spreadsheets full of people's data and do away with your huge document libraries full of information, and it's going to be far more integrated and being able to get information to where it needs to be on demand. And what those solutions look like, we don't really know yet, but that will definitely come, and we can see some of that from some of our allies in incorporating new technologies. So I think people embracing technology in their personal lives to then bring those skills back to the military is going to be a huge push from us.
George, anything to add, or Louis?
So I've had a conversation with Group Captain at Astra very recently, and he sort of mentioned it's in developer space is going to change massively, and that's something, especially with jobs that I've already held with the SRC, we see a lot of movement on. There are just people who are just doing their day job thinking this could be done a little bit better, and they're taking those steps and using the tools that are in front of them to make that happen. And so it will be on us as the custodians of that technology to help them in that space and to allow them to learn the things they need to learn to make their jobs better. They know their job better than I'm ever going to know it. So if they've got the skills then to make a digital process or to use cyber in a way that helps their day, then good on them, and long may it continue.
Louis, anything to add at all?
I would only just say that it's absolutely right. It's all part of the continuous improvement that every station undertakes. I think everyone does it quite well, and as Sash quite rightly said, if it's coming from a specific section which is outside of our field but can incorporate cyber to benefit them, I think it's a great idea.
Fabulous, gents. Thank you very much for taking time out of a busy day to talk to us today, and thank you for joining us here on Inside Air.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, sir.
Hi, I'm AS1 Emma Kerwin, and this is Reheat, where we take a look at some of the RAF stories you might have missed. More than 1,300 skilled jobs across the UK will be sustained into the next decade. That's what the government has committed to, announcing over £500 million to strengthen and upgrade the RAF's Typhoon fighter jet fleet. Defence Secretary John Healey says our Typhoon fleet is the backbone of UK and NATO air defence, operated across Europe by the Royal Air Force and our allies to protect our skies and security. Personnel and aircraft from the Chinook Force have deployed to northern Norway as part of Operation Clockwork. The deployment supports defence activity in the High North and maintains the UK's ability to operate in some of the world's most challenging environments. Operating more than 200 nautical miles inside the Arctic Circle, Chinook crews and engineers will train in extreme cold weather conditions alongside NATO colleagues from the Royal Norwegian Air Force. The training includes mountain flying and engineering support in sub-zero temperatures. The global Eurofighter Typhoons reached a major milestone, surpassing 1 million flying hours in operational service. The jet entered service in 2003. 9 nations currently fly the aircraft, with Turkey set to become the 10th. It operates across the full spectrum of air operations, from routine airspace security and peacekeeping to high-intensity conflicts. And a former Royal Air Force pilot's been appointed as NATO's Deputy Supreme Allied Commander Europe. Air Chief Marshal Sir John Stringer will be the first RAF officer to hold the post since 1984. It's the most senior UK role in the alliance. That was Reheat for Inside Air.
Cheers, Emma. And now it's time to find out who's under the hat with Ben.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
Squad leader Francis Marino, and I'm known as Patch.
What's your profession?
I'm an aerospace engineering officer, and I'm currently based in RAF Akatiri.
What's the best thing about your job?
Best thing about my current job, as corny as it sounds, is probably the people. I look after quite a large squadron, and I really enjoy trying to develop them, move them on through their careers, and push them and get them to push their own boundaries.
Hardest part of your job?
It's probably the opposite of that. It's where I'm trying to help people and they do things to undermine that and don't help themselves.
Best location you've served?
Contrary to popular belief, it's probably the Falklands. For me personally, it was kind of a dream come true to continue doing the research that I started at university and try and leave Mount Pleasant in a much better place than I found it.
What bit of luxury kit do you never deploy without?
Probably my own water bottle.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
Graduating Cambridge on a CAS fellowship and having my little son there.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review, subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and then join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.